Okay, so for the heating and cooling modes, now this we're probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Because I know you probably definitely don't need this for Monday. But it's good to have because this not only gives you the heat and cooling modes, but it starts to give you an idea of how well, in further detail, um, your actual energy analysis, the energy strategies that you've taken is working in your building. Because obviously, heat gain through your wall is going to affect your heating and cooling modes. So if you designed your building quite well, and, with your building up your walls or shading devices and stuff like that, it's gonna positively affect your heat loads that go through the wall and how much cooling you'll need in your space. So from the Analyze tab, your heating and cooling reports can be generated. You see reports and schedules. You can hit heating and cooling mode, and it'll bring up this kind of option, and then you'll see it gives you the area, kind of like everything, but then it's kind of just your building, and then it starts to show you your spaces. First one, I just click over here. So you see your building model, and then default, you have two spaces. The two spaces that I set up, obviously you guys will have a lot more. But what you do to break it down even more, and to kind of start to group those spaces, is if you go back to a floor plan, and the same under the Analyze tab, and at the very end of the space and zone panel, you have the zone function. And what you do is you start to select spaces, and then you finish the zone. And then if I go back to the heat and load, now those two spaces are grouped in zone 1. And so what that does is you can start to kind of zone your spaces. So you may have a zone for just just retail, a zone for just the cafe, a zone for just the inn, and then obviously maybe zoned by floors. So maybe you have a zone for the first floor of the inn, a zone for the second floor of the inn, or however your building's laid out, or you may have multiple mechanical systems for different areas, so each one of those systems could have its own zone, or however you want to set it up. That's how it would be. So I'm just going to leave this now as as zone 1 for each. Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a zone for each one. So I'm going to delete that zone that I just put in. I'm going to create a zone for just that one, and then a zone for just that one. And then now, when I go back to that load, you're going to see two zones. Obviously, since I already put one in, it's starts renaming them as 2 and 3. So it's 2 and 3. And then if I come here, try to find that actual zone, and if so I clicked on that zone, and you can tell by here that you're in a zone. You can start to actually change the service type of the zone as well. So this is where you can see when we did the energy calculations, you can only pick one system that you wanted for your building. But when you start to kind of group spaces by zones, you can start to select different mechanical service types. So this one I'm going to do as a duct, and then for the manufacturing, I'm going to come down and actually have to be on the zone. So you can see here, that was the space, so I make sure I'm on the zone. And then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to put this as a, where is it? I know it's here somewhere. I'm looking for VRF, variable refrigerant flow. This is I've mentioned this to some of you in class. This is a type of mechanical system that has very minimal ductwork to it, because there's the professors usually have someone come over from the engineering school to kind of talk about mechanical systems and even structural systems. So they would get into this. But basically, it's kind of the diffusers themselves kind of become the AC units, and we'll get into that more to actually explain what the system is itself. And then you can edit the coolant information for the zone. So when you're in the zone, you can click on coolant information, and you can actually set the temperature that you want to cool, or the coolant air temperature, what you want those to be. Same for heating. Obviously, for this space, we don't need heat, so you don't have to worry about heat. If I go back to cooling for a second and you store it on heating, you can even check this so you can tell the type of humidity you want to be taken out of the space and you want left in the space. Outdoor air information. This is where you can override for the zone itself in general. You can how much outdoor air per person is needed, or outdoor air per area, or air changes per hour, and it all sets it up. So in this instance, if you know that you need 10 cubic feet per minute of air per person, and with the spaces, and so it calculates up all the spaces and how many people per space, adds up the total number of people, and then it would time this by this factor, and then so say there's maybe there's 20 in general, it would 20 by this times this number, and that's how much cubic feet per minute of air you need per person. It'll show it in the report that's generated, though. Then actually, and then click back on that for a second, just make sure there's nothing else. And then you can see here, so the dimensions, it adds up. Obviously, this is, since the space is the same size as the zone, it would be the same. But if I had a zone for just both of those, if I left it as just one, it would add, it would sum up to 2 spaces, or however many spaces are in it, it would sum it up and start to give you total sums quickly there. And then, so when I go back to this, the heating and cooling icon, which again was Analyze tab, and then this button up here. So you start to see the zones. You can, and then even from here, instead of doing it through the properties, if you're having a hard time trying to find them, you can just click on the zone from here, and then it kind of gives you the same information where you can select its service type, and then you can start to set the heating information and the cooling information. Obviously, if your spaces are set to just cooled, you're not gonna. It still will generate the report for the heating, but if it's just set to cooled, really only the cool spaces you have to, the cooling information you have to worry about. And then you can do the same thing for the zones. You can click on the zone itself, and then you can start to change the properties that we set before for the different types of spaces, I should say. So if you expand a zone, you can click on the number of spaces, and then you can start to you can manipulate the stuff that we've already set up in one of the earlier parts of this tutorial. Or if you start to do this from scratch, if you do this, you can just kind of if you have your building, you can just pick every single zone, and then you can use this to instead of having to try to find every single zone that you put in. Now you can come to this, and then you can start to do the zones by there, and then do it that way. If I zoom in closer, you can start to see it. But if I go back to this general, the general tab. So again, this is your kind of general building type that you want for your thing, and this is kind of the same functions that were in that energy analysis tab. The energy analysis settings that you have here. So you have general building type that you can select. Location, again, if it's set up through the Manage tab, and location, that will come preset. You can set your ground plane, whatever your level for your ground plane is. The type of construction project phase it is, new construction or existing. Again, you can look up, if you want, you can look up what that is, and if you want to change it. So now, for this is where you have, it's very similar to the space, the space function with the energy analysis. to the energy settings. So you can do it by identify exterior elements, which it'll take all the elements and calculate them and see what what you get through. If you set up to certain walls, if you've actually constructed the walls and didn't just use the generic ones and they actually have structure to them, you can set it up that way, and then you continue on. You can say in general, what type of system are you using for the mechanical, but obviously, as we saw here, you can set it up individually for different zones, and then similar to the energy analysis settings, you can tell the infiltration class, the report type if you want it to be detailed, and this is where here when you set it to detailed, you see all the different breakdown that you get. And then this one, not 100% what this does, but again, you can hit F1 at any point in Revit, wherever you are, and it'll bring you some tutorial instructions and definitions of certain components. But going back to this for a second, so if I switch this to function parameter, so this is, if you wanted to do this for Monday, you could. So if you just have generic wall types and roof types and floor types, you can switch this to function parameter, and then it'll use the function parameters that you set up for the building in general, and then obviously for the spaces themselves. If you've done an override for a space, I believe I have this one set as that override. I'm actually going to switch that back to building, so it just uses the general building because I had nothing set up for the space itself. So I could have it be an override and then set all that up, and that would be for that space, but I'm just going to leave it for the building. So if you do it this way, it'll give you kind of a quick synopsis of how well the systems are going to be. So this is how you can start to see, using the heat and cooling load calculations, when it's a little bit more detailed compared to the energy analysis, because now you can start to see how your actual building is behaving. You can start to test different types of building service systems in general or for specific spaces and zones. And then you can also, from here, you can start to test different types of construction methods that you're going to use. So you can kind of pick, do I want the roof to be, the roof's going to be, lightweight concrete or however it's going to be. Then, what type of wall it's going to be. So here you can use this to start to test things, and then once you get a general sense, we can actually start to, make the wall be that type of construction that you realize that you want, and then that's when you would switch over to identify exterior elements, and it would identify all your elements that you already have in here, and use it from that. I'm going to leave mine set as identify exterior elements, just because I've set this up where everything already has properties, the thermal properties and everything set to it. So I'm going to run it this way. But I'll run another report that does the function parameter for you. And then, so you can save the settings. So these will come up. If I hit save, it'll just save the settings. So that way, if you're setting up your spaces through here, but you don't want to run the report itself, you can hit save settings and it'll save everything for you, and then you can come back at a later date and calculate them, or you can hit calculate and it'll calculate it for you. And while that's calculating, I'm going to pause the video and then resume when it's done. Okay, well, it still hasn't come through. It might be that the Green Building Studio is now. It's actually giving me the same white screen that I had in the project that I was showing you from what I did when I took the class. So I think Green Studio could just be down. It's just not working right now. But you can see when you run the report, if you scroll down to kind of where you have your sheets and stuff, a new category called reports is created, and that's where the heating and cooling load report is put. But I can quickly show you, this is the PDF from when I did the class for my project. So it gives you a project summary, gives you a building summary for all the cooling calculations and heat calculations, and then it breaks it down by zone, all the different zones that you have, and then if you scroll to the very end, I don't have it on this report, but it actually will show you